The major media are selectively reporting the FBI and DOJ's briefing of key lawmakers last week about that informant in the Trump presidential campaign. Well, it's typical of today's screaming headlines. ABC's website blared, "Gowdy disputes Trump spy claim, says FBI acted properly." But that ignores a number of key points Oversight Chair Trey Gowdy made on Fox last night. The first was that the DOJ made clear that the president was not and is not a target of the Russia investigation, despite the Democrats' constant disinformation on that point. Gowdy also could not explain why the FBI did not simply do that defensive briefing of the Trump campaign instead of relying on an informant inside his campaign. On The Angle last night, former federal prosecutor Andy McCarthy laid out his theory.
There's no question that they spied on the campaign. If you were looking at a corporation and you thought that the corporation was being corrupted by three people, you would go to the CEO and say, I think we have a problem here. We need your cooperation. What they did instead was send covert operatives to pry information out.
Now, this is why a number of conservatives are unhappy that Gowdy kind of muddied the waters or would downplay Trump's spy claims. One of them is Dan Bongino of NRI TV. And also joining us is Daniel Goldman, former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York. Great to see both of you. Dan Bongino, first, let's go to you on this. We invited Gowdy on the show. We want him to come on. I think he's a really smart guy. A little confusing, kind of the way he approached this issue, although a little bit misrepresented, I think, in the press. But where do you come down on what he said specifically about the Spygate question?
No, I think Gowdy's appearance was disgraceful. I think you're being nice to him. I understand, Laura, but Gowdy's appearance is now being used as propaganda by the left. And what he said was so completely out of line and factually incorrect. Laura, let's just run through some basic facts here, okay? So according to Gowdy, the FBI ran it by the book, how the Americans would have wanted them to run the investigation. Really? So why didn't they notify Congress for 8 months, Laura? 8 months about the investigation when prior procedure was to notify Congress quarterly on sensitive investigations. Another question for you. If they ran it by the book, how is it that two suspicious, potentially felony leaks of information happened in both October and January to the New York Times and Washington Post? Is that an example, Mr. Gowdy, of a finely tuned investigation run like the Americans would have wanted, by the way, hidden from Congress? Seriously, give me a break. He did nothing but feed the leftist propaganda machine yesterday, and he should go back and clarify those outrageous, absurd remarks.
Well, I think he's obsessing over the definition of spy within the intelligence community versus an informant in an ongoing investigation, which I think is beyond the point. Daniel Goldman, I want to play for you a soundbite from Jason Chaffetz earlier. Let's watch.
Jeff Sessions as the Attorney General is there in name only. He's absolutely worthless. The sooner the president names a new Attorney General, the better. He should never have recused himself. He didn't need to in a counterintelligence operation.
This is, of course, regarding the Trump tweet today, commenting on what Gowdy did say that a lot of us took note of, which is that you could have had any top lawyer be the Attorney General, and meanwhile you pick a guy who everyone likes or liked, but recused himself right off the bat. Your reaction?
Well, I think that the president probably should do his homework a little bit more, because this was an obvious recusal under Department of Justice regulations. This was should not have been a surprise to him or his lawyers. And so the fact that he then announced that he was recusing himself because he was an integral player in the campaign and therefore could not oversee an investigation into the campaign should not have been a surprise. The other problem that I see as a former federal prosecutor about the way that Trump views Sessions and the Attorney General is that he seems to be talking a lot about wanting someone who's loyal to him, which on its face is fine. He gets to choose his cabinet, and I get that. But what he's really indicating and implying in making that statement is that he wants someone loyal to him at the top of the Justice Department who will squash an investigation into either him or his campaign, associates, children, or whatever you have of it.
Well, wait a second. Well, Dan, let me just say this. Was Eric Holder perceived to be loyal to Barack Obama? because I think you could go through a number of scenarios where you could argue that Eric Holder went above and beyond what the left is now saying Trump should, have the relationship with Sessions. So it seems like that loyalty went real deep between the two of them on whether it was the IRS investigation, how they handled Fast and Furious, how they did the Rosen oversight, whether the president knew anything about any of this, was ever briefed on it. I mean, you couldn't get any information out of these people. So I think loyalty really mattered to Obama at the top of the Justice Department.
I think loyalty in some respects matters, but I think...
Yeah, the president's wingman, he called himself.
Well, I don't know if that's true or not. But
it's true. That's what he called himself.
It's true.
When Trump is saying that he wants loyalty, as a former organized crime prosecutor, I hear something very different.
Okay, yeah.
Well, no, I hear something very different than wanting someone who is close to him, who is loyal to him. The critical difference that I think you have to acknowledge, both of you, is that Barack Obama was not under investigation by the Department of Justice. So whether you like it or not, Dan, he is under investigation. So you have to recognize that there needs to be some division between that investigation into the president and the Department of Justice.
Yeah, well, he also is the chief executive officer of the executive branch of the government, and as chief executive officer, if he wanted to, constitutionally, Dan Bongino, he can fire anyone he wants. Now, whether it's politically appropriate, I think Daniel Goldman is right. It wouldn't be politically appropriate to do that. That would send everyone into a frenzy. But if he decided he wanted to get rid of Comey, he can get rid of Comey. If he decided he wants to get rid of Rosenstein, who was a disaster from the beginning, I would argue you should get rid of Rosenstein. I mean, you get rid of Sessions if you want to.
So what you're saying, though, is
Go
that
ahead.
he's sorry. What you're saying, though, is he's completely above the law, and that he can fire anybody for corrupt practices.
Dan, you're just making stuff up now, and I wish you would stop doing that. You said before that you want the president. He's looking for someone to quash these investigations. I'm guessing you're not familiar with the details of the case, because it's already open source that the president said multiple times that if there was a Russian intelligence asset in his campaign trying to compromise his campaign, that he wants to know about it. So, Dan, you may be hearing this for the first time, and I'll give you a chance to retract that. But who quashes an investigation while asking the FBI simultaneously to investigate it? I'll wait for your answer on that. You may not know those facts.
He wants a fair investigation, I think. I think he wants it to be fair. I think he wants an attorney general who doesn't melt when the New York Times editorial board gets all upset about a recusal that he never had to do. So I think that's probably what he wants. I think that's what most presidents want. Dan, go ahead.
I mean, look, he had to do it under Department of Justice regulations.
He didn't. No, we didn't. Why did
you don't think that he was an integral part of the campaign?
Because Kislyak saw him at a party, and Kislyak, as he did with everybody, stopped at his office.
It has nothing to do with Kislyak.
What did he have to do with Russian collusion? He had zero to do with Russian collusion.
It doesn't have to do with that.
I think that was convenient.
It has to do with the fact that he was an integral part of the campaign, and the campaign was the subject of the investigation, or was involved in the investigation.
A phony investigation on pretextual grounds that was started with a ridiculous informant who was trolling for God knows what, for probably money.
How do you know what the informant was doing?
You're saying that Jeff Sessions was intricately involved in some way in the Russia investigation.
No, I'm not. I'm saying Jeff Sessions was involved in the campaign.
That was a prudential decision that he made, and I would say it was not. I have the regs here. I don't think it was required at all.
All right, read the regs. They're very clear.
How many of the Obama people ever recuse themselves? Rarely, if ever.
Because Obama was never investigated.
Well,
I'm not here to defend Obama versus Trump. I'm just saying to you that if there is a confidential informant that has information about wrongdoing in the campaign, I do think this is important.
All right, guys, we'll have you back. Fantastic segment.
Important to point out what is a blatant left-wing double standard in this country. And perhaps the person who summed it up best was the White House press secretary today, Sarah Sanders, when she said this. Take a look.
The president's pointing to the hypocrisy in the media, saying that the most horrible things about this president, and nobody addresses it. Where was Bob Iger's apology to the White House staff for Jamel Hill calling the president and anyone associated with him a white supremacist? To Christians around the world for Joy Behar calling Christianity a mental illness? Where was the apology for Kathy Griffin going on a profane rant against the president on The View after a photo showed her holding President Trump's decapitated head? head? And where was the apology from Bob Iger for ESPN hiring Keith Olbermann after his numerous expletive-laced tweets attacking the president as a Nazi and even expanding Olbermann's role after that attack against the president's family? This is a double standard that the president is speaking about. No one is defending her comments. They're inappropriate, but that's what the point that he was making.
Well said, Sarah Sanders. And I said at the beginning of this monologue, let's think about this. It is time for all Americans, regardless of whatever your political affiliation is. Yeah, we all need to do better. We all need to hold ourselves, our friends, accountable for words and actions. We need to be one nation, one people. This country is going to succeed or fail together. If we're attacked, it's all of us attacked. We're supposed to be the United States of America, regardless of race, creed, color, national origin. My religion does teach me, all created, all of us, by the same God in his image. We can all do so much better. We've got to be the United States of America. That should be everybody's goal. Too many people have died and sacrificed for all of us to have liberty and freedom, and we owe that to every single solitary child in this country.